Hello, boxing fans around the world. Thank you for joining me once again here on Talk and Fight for another episode of Boxing News Today. Indeed, it was been a tumultuous past couple of days, that's for sure. We've seen some great action in Las Vegas, but let's start off with a fight that took place in York Hall over in London between Caroline Dubois and an opponent, Mexico's Magali Rodriguez. Dubois won her eighth professional fight following a ferocious 10-round war with the tough and talented Rodriguez. Dubois dominated the scorecards to a unanimous decision victory, as I say, which was held at York Hall and was also shown live on Sky Sports in the UK. After a slow start, however, Dubois started to grow into the rhythm of the fight, and in the third round, she landed some heavy body shots which hurt Rodriguez. The blows forced her to defend her torso as well as her head, thereby inadvertently opening up more opportunities for Dubois to land in all areas. This led to a brutal knockdown in the sixth round, a devastating right hook to Rodriguez's jaw, set up by textbook 1-2 combination, which allowed the hook to land perfectly. This is just another fine example of the sport of boxing and how it's impacted women and the type of fights that we are seeing now around the world. Ben Shalom, boxer, CEO, and founder, said to Sky Sports after the fight, "What a performance from Caroline. How Rodriguez got up in the ninth round, I'll never know. Obviously, the lightweight world titles have been held stagnant for a while now. Katie Taylor has been the star of women's boxing, but Caroline Dubois is the new star of women's boxing, and I'm sure one of the big four sanctioning bodies will recognize that too." Elsewhere on that card, by the way, someone who was featured by Mike Orr on his show Knuckle Up last week, Jimmy TKV. Unfortunately, he was on the losing end of a match involving Igor Macedo. He suffered a technical knockout in round number 6 at 1 minute and 11 seconds. Elsewhere around the world, let's fly over to Las Vegas. The undisputed super middleweight champ successfully defended his world titles by dropping Jermell Charlo on his way to a dominant unanimous decision. And this story comes to us via our friends over at worldboxingnews.net. The scorecards read 119-109, 118-109 twice. And it was on a Showtime pay-per-view event from the T-Mobile Arena, as I said, in Las Vegas. Said Canelo, "I'm a strong fighter all the time against all the fighters. I'm a strong man. Nobody can beat this Canelo." And that quote I have seen all over social media this weekend and today. So Canelo notched his 60th win in the process, pushing his career record to 62-2 with 39 knockouts as a pro. And he was dominant from the start to finish, using a masterful ring IQ and sublime power that's made him a future Hall of Famer and completely disoriented good old Charlo. Charlo now drops to 35-2-1 with 19 knockouts of his own and is now likely going to move down a few weight classes to try and score some interesting matchups, likely against Terence Crawford. But Crawford doesn't seem to want any of that now that he's lost. In the co-main event, by the way, we saw top super welterweight contender Erickson Lubin, now 26-2, take home a unanimous decision over the previously unbeaten Jesus Ramos Jr., who's now 20-1 after 12 rounds, winning on all three scorecards by 117, 111, 116, 112, and 115, 113. Said Lubin, "We went in there to feel him out and box him and beat him to the punch with counters because of his strength. It was working all night long. I was striking and moving. It was boxing 101. And make sure you tune into our own Neil the Deal show. His show is called Boxing 101, ironically enough. In the pay-per-view opener of that Canelo-Charlo fight, by the way, rising middleweight sensation Elijah Garcia emerged victorious via eighth-round technical knockout in an electrifying firefight against Armando Resendez. It was a really hard fight, said Garcia. He's 20 years old, by the way. Resendez is good people. He's really tough. I wish him all the best. This was 100% my toughest fight so far. I left everything I could in the ring. Good for him, as it should be. By the way, I made mention of Terence Crawford earlier. This is what he was posting on social media, and I quote, "Congratulations, Canelo. You made the so-called lion look like a baby cub." He went on to say, "Okay, y'all, I'm over Twin Charlo. He's no longer on my hit list. He went out there and laid down and let Canelo spank him like he was his daddy with no type of resistance. Go for it, bud." Uh, uh, Now, speaking of Crawford, um, Canelo Alvarez doesn't seem to be nearly as excited or as interested as we fans are when it comes to being a fight made between himself and pound for pounder Terence Crawford. Ever since Bud spoke about his very real desire to go up 168 and do what has never been done before, we've been calling for a super fight. And that would, in terms of hype, global fans have global fans' interest around the world for sure. But Canelo, happy due to his dominant win over Jermell Charlo, the 12-rounder, leaving Canelo feeling fresh and satisfied. He's pleased to punch over the way he felt back to his best. He seems pretty lukewarm in terms of an interest in making that Crawford fight. You know, I always say if the fight makes sense, Canelo said, why not? But Crawford isn't on the plan, you know. Like I say, if it makes sense, maybe, but I don't know right now. For his part, Terence Crawford, as reported by Alan Fox over in BoxingNews24.com, said he's no longer, Terence Crawford, he says he's no longer interested in fighting Jermell Charlo either after watching how he lost to Canelo Alvarez. Jermell wasn't willing to put it all on the line, take chances, and risk getting knocked out cold by the hard-hitting King Canelo. Once Jermell felt Canelo's power in the first round, he was like, forget this. I'm not letting him knock me out. Crawford isn't saying who he's going to fight to get the mega money now that he's scratched Jermell off his list because Bud cannot forget he can forget about Canelo, it says, because after all, the Mexican star said last night, he's not in my plans, referring to Terence Crawford. So that leaves Terence with potentially a rematch against Errol Spence if he's looking for that massive payday, that's for sure. But moving up to 158, Keith Thurman is a good option for Bud at 147. Jerome Boots Ennis would be his IBF mandatory. Clearly one of the best fighters in the 147-pound division. And like many fans, Crawford is disappointed in what he saw from Jermell because he felt he could have shown more effort to win by standing his ground and showing some actual courage. In this writer's opinion, Jermell fought passively, backing up constantly, and letting undisputed middleweight champ Canelo control the rounds with his pressure. Wow. So, doesn't say much more about who he might end up fighting, but we'll wait to see who is up next. Have a quick look here at the big fight announcement, though, over the weekend, one that we're all looking forward to, finally, involving Tyson Fury. As we all know, according to my friends over at ESPN, Tyson Fury, he's a rare talent. He's definitely top of the list when it comes to big names in the heavyweight division, the one that everyone's looking for to gain bragging rights, among other things, if not a fair dollar. At the end of the day, according to Mike Coppinger, Tyson Fury and Oleksandr Usyk are set to battle for the heavyweight supremacy. They signed contracts for an undisputed heavyweight championship fight in Saudi Arabia. The dates to be announced, likely December or early January. And this isn't simply a fight for all four heavyweight titles. It's a generational matchup, says Coppinger. Pitting all-time greats in boxing's glamour division. It will be a rare meeting of heavyweights, both ranked in the pound-for-pound top 10 and, of course, in the actual heavyweight division itself. Before he meets his toughest challenge yet, Fury will have to fight former UFC heavyweight champ Francis Ngannou, and that's not exactly a guaranteed victory either, even though Coppinger believes it just amounts to a tune-up for the Usyk showdown. So what's at stake? Legacy. Bragging rights as the greatest heavyweight of this era. Fury and Usyk are already headed for the Hall of Fame on the first ballot, but what transpires in the ring will go a long way towards cementing their place on the mythical all-time great heavyweight list. Fury received ample criticism when the Usyk fight fell apart back in March, only for Fury to sign on for a bout with MMA fighter a few months later. And now Fury has made good by delivering not one but two marquee heavyweight events months apart. And he can certainly use the Ngannou bout as a way to shake off any ring rust and get into peak shape for Usyk, a smaller, faster heavyweight who Fury often refers to as a cruiserweight, who will look to beat Fury to the punch. So we all certainly look forward to that particular fight. But Eddie Hearn has to chime in, and we can't leave Eddie Hearn out of this conversation, can we? So according to Charles Brunn, my good friend over at BoxingNews24.com, he says Eddie Hearn is skeptical about Tyson Fury receiving $200 million US from the Saudis for his fights with Francis Ngannou and Oleksandr Usyk. Hearn thinks Fury is getting around $100 million total for the Ngannou and Usyk fights, and the smaller number going for the event against ex-UFC fighter. Fury's promoter, Bob Arum, said in an interview that Tyson would be getting in excess of $100 million for the Usyk fight in December. Next thing you know, a rumor sprang up about Fury making $200 million, which is an absurd amount of dough for the crossover fight against boxing novice Ngannou and Usyk. Hearn sounded a bit envious when discussing the huge payday that Fury will be getting for the Usyk-Ngannou fight, and you can understand why. The massive money deal that Hearn thought he had with the Saudis to stage Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder in Saudi Arabia never came through, and now Eddie doesn't know when or where that fight will happen. The money that Hearn thought the Joshua Wilder fight was going to get from the Saudis has turned out to be an eye-fooling mirage. And he now sounds like he's mourning over the pot of gold no longer being there. The Saudis don't seem interested in the Joshua versus Wilder contest any longer, and it's pretty easy to figure out why. It's likely the combination of Joshua's poor performances, dating back all the way to 2019, coupled with his soft opponents in his last two fights. Joshua's record is 2-2 in his last four fights, making him a poor candidate for the Saudis to shower him with money for a fight, especially with 37-year-old former WBC heavyweight champ Wilder, who himself has only fought once since losing to Fury in their trilogy contest back in 2021. So, question, is Fury getting $200 million? What do you think? In one interview, it's $100 million. In another interview, it's $200 million, said Eddie Hearn, when asked if it's true that Tyson Fury might be getting $200 million. I would say making over $100 million, Ngannou and Usyk, it's probably 30 and 70, 30 and 80. But I've heard there's a rematch clause, whatever happens, so it's probably plus. Arum said himself that Fury's getting over $100 million, so that's probably the ballpark figure he'll be making for both fights against the 37-year-old Ngannou and IBF, WB, and WBO champ Usyk. Let's weigh in on the Leigh Wood versus Josh Warrington battle that'll be taking place this upcoming weekend in Sheffield. I think I might have reported it was in Nottingham. It's actually taking place in Sheffield, and it's for the WBA featherweight title. Wood, who's 35, defends the belt for the first time since regaining it back in May, when the Nottingham boxer outpointed Mauricio Lara to avenge a stoppage loss to the Mexican, who won their first bout in February. Meanwhile, Warrington is aiming to get back into winning ways, following a decision defeat by Luis Alberto Lopez back in December. And with that result, the Leeds fighter lost his IBF title, which he won from old foe Kiko Martinez last March, which he previously had held from 2018 to 2019. Prior to the fight, Lopez and Martinez, Warrington actually has his own pair of duels with Lara in 2021. The 32-year-old was stopped by the Mexican in their last fight, and their rematch ended as a draw due to clash of heads. Are there other fighters on this card? Yes, there are. Let's have a quick look and see if we can see if their names. Wood, Warrington, Terry Harper and Cecilia Breakhouse are on the card, and that's for Harper's WBA super welterweight and the vacant WBO title. Hopi Price is going to be fighting Conor Coghill in the featherweight division. Kieran Conway's on this bill as well, fighting Linus Adulfia. Junaid Boston against Corey McCulloch. Cameron Vong versus Engel Gomez, and Kobe McNamara versus Francesco Rodriguez in the bantamweight division. Good stuff. I want to quickly mention as well Here in Canada, we had a big fight. Ryan, the Bruiser Rozicki, okay, dethroned NABF cruiserweight champ Alante Bam Bam Green, who's now 10-2-1, 7 knockouts out of Cleveland by spectacular 10th round knockout. That was held in the Hamilton Convention Center in Hamilton, Ontario, in Canada. It was a tough, grueling fight that ended suddenly when the heavy-handed Rozicki connected with a devastating left hook that put Green down face first in the final stanza. Rozicki, by the way, who's rated WBC number 8, IBF number 8, WBA number 9, and WBO number 9, has now won 6 straight fights since his only loss as a late sub against Oscar Rivas in the WBC Bridgerweight World title fight. So very good stuff out of Canada. And let's conclude this quick episode by a boxing scene story, courtesy of boxingnewsonline.net. They say Canelo Alvarez was good, but seeing the return of Jim Lampley was even better. That's their headline. Let me just read you the opening paragraph. You can go to this site to check out any information. Otherwise, let's have a quick look here. Canelo Alvarez quite rightfully dominated the headlines after his one-sided victory over Jermell Charlo at the weekend. But it was the return of true boxing legend that caught the attention of this writer. Jim Lampley's voice is synonymous with some of the most memorable fights in modern boxing history, thanks to his peerless run as a commentator on HBO. When the broadcaster pulled out of boxing entirely in 2018, Lampley, too, withdrew from the sport. It wasn't until this weekend when he called the Canelo Charlo fight for pay-per-view.com. Called a fringe streaming platform that features a live chat function on his broadcast. And Lampley did what he does best. He calls fights with unbridled passion, eloquence, and knowledge. But his talents are wasted on such a platform, said that particular writer. Woo. Canelo Charlo was a Showtime pay-per-view in the U.S. and picked up by DAZN in the U.K., neither of whom have tapped the talents of Lampley in the 5 years since HBO chopped off its boxing arm. And there you have it, fight fans. All the news fit to print. Thanks for joining me once again here on Talk and Fight. Appreciate it very much. Remember to like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell. We'll see you later on at 4 p.m. Eastern Time when I join Mike Orr on his show, Knuckle Up. Thank you.